Hi. My name is Evelyn Harper. I am 22 years old. The day I graduated, there were empty seats where my parents should have been. No flowers. No hug. No "we're proud of you." Just a text from my father. Busy. We'll celebrate later. Later never came. But 5 years did. And last week, my $100 million luxury hotel hit the front page of every major real estate publication in the country. Youngest female developer launches $100 million waterfront property. Interviews. Investors. Cameras. Forbes mentions. That's when my phone buzzed. Dad. Family dinner at 7 p.m. Important discussion. No congratulations. No pride. Just business. I stared at the message for a long moment. The same man who skipped my graduation wanted an important discussion now that my name was trending. I replied with one word. Okay. At 7 p.m. sharp, I walked into their house. Not as the daughter they overlooked, but as the woman whose signature now moved 9 figures. And I didn't come alone. I showed up with the board chairman. When I walked in, the house looked exactly the same. Same chandelier. Same polished dining table. Same portraits of my brother's achievements on the walls. Mine were never there. Mom rushed forward with a smile that felt rehearsed. Sweetheart. Look at you. Dad stood up slowly, measured, studying me like an investment opportunity. And then they noticed him. The board chairman. Tailored suit. Silver hair. Quiet authority. The temperature in the room changed instantly. Dad's posture straightened. Mom's smile sharpened. Oh, Dad said, clearing his throat. You brought company. I took my seat calmly. You said it was an important discussion. Dinner started politely. Too politely. Compliments about the hotel. Questions about investors. Careful praise that sounded like strategy. Finally, Dad put his fork down. There's an opportunity, he said. A commercial plaza project. We need capital backing. With your liquidity and visibility right now. There it was. Not "we're proud of you." Not "we're sorry we missed your graduation." Just leverage. I folded my hands on the table. Calm. Controlled. My liquidity, I said softly, is tied to performance metrics and board approvals. The chairman nodded slightly beside me. Dad's smile tightened. We're family. I looked at him steadily. You weren't at my graduation. Silence. Mom shifted in her seat. Dad's jaw clenched. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a negotiation. And for the first time in my life, I held all the power. Dad tried to recover quickly. We're not talking about the past, he said. This is about moving forward. Together. Together. Interesting word. I glanced at the chairman beside me. He hadn't touched his food. He was observing. Calculating. Exactly as planned. You're asking for $18 million in backing, I said calmly. For a plaza project that already has 2 rejected permits and unstable tenant commitments. Mom's fork froze midair. Dad's eyes narrowed. How do you? The chairman finally spoke. His voice was smooth, precise. We review the proposal this afternoon. The air left the room. Dad hadn't expected that. He thought this was a quiet family pitch. Emotional leverage. Private pressure. Not due diligence. I leaned back slightly. You skipped my graduation because you said it wasn't important, I said softly. But tonight is important. Silence. Dad's confidence was slipping. The same man who once dismissed my ambitions was now being evaluated across his own dining table. You built your company with family loans, he muttered. I met his gaze. No. I'd built it with scholarships. Internships. And nights you never noticed I wasn't home. The chairman placed his napkin down carefully. Mr. Harper, he said evenly, your project carries significant risk. At present, our firm has no interest in participating. No interest. 3 words. Dad's face paled. This wasn't just a rejection. It was a reminder. Power shifts quietly. And tonight, it had shifted permanently. Dad didn't react immediately. He just sat there, processing. Because this wasn't how he pictured tonight going. He thought I would walk in alone. Maybe emotional. Maybe still seeking approval. Instead, I brought the man who signs off on 9-figure developments. And he said no. At my table. Mom tried to soften the room. Sweetheart, we're just asking for support. Families help each other. I looked at her calmly. Families show up. Silence hit harder than shouting ever could. Dad's voice lowered. Controlled, but tight. You're really going to let outsiders decide this? I smiled faintly. They are not outsiders. They are my partners. That's when his expression changed. Not anger. Realization. He wasn't negotiating with his daughter. He was pitching to a CEO. And CEOs don't invest emotionally. They invest strategically. The chairman stood slowly. I believe our answer is clear. Dad stood too, desperation flickering beneath his pride. You'll regret turning your back on family. I paused at the doorway. Without raising my voice, without shaking, without even looking angry, I said, I didn't turn my back. You just didn't show up. And that's when it hit him. He hadn't just miscalculated money. He had miscalculated me. The next morning, I didn't wake up thinking about my father. I woke up thinking about expansion. By 8 a.m., I was in a glass conference room overlooking the waterfront, the same skyline my hotel now dominated. At 9:12 a.m., a new headline dropped. Harper Group secures prime downtown block for Phase 2 development. But that wasn't the shocking part. The address was the exact block my father had been trying to secure for his commercial plaza. My acquisition had closed quietly 2 weeks earlier. Clean. Strategic. Undisputed. His proposal? Dead on arrival. By 10 a.m., my phone started buzzing. Missed call. Missed call. Missed call. Dad. I didn't answer. Instead, I watched as market analysts began speculating online. Bold move by Harper Group. Young developer outmaneuvers legacy firms. Legacy firms. That's what they were calling my father's company now. Outdated. At 11:30 a.m., he finally texted. You knew? Yes. I knew. I knew the zoning board timeline. I knew the permits he was waiting on. I knew the landowner was willing to sell quietly if the number was right. And I moved first. Not to hurt him, but because in business, hesitation is expensive. By noon, the chairman stepped into my office. Efficient timing, he said calmly. I smiled. Precision is everything. Across town, my father wasn't just facing rejection. He was facing irrelevance. And this time, there was no family dinner to fix it. By 2 p.m., the office door opened without knocking. Dad. He stood there, hands in pockets, trying to look casual. But his eyes betrayed him, a mix of disbelief and frustration. Evelyn, we need to talk, he said, voice controlled but shaking slightly. I didn't rise. I didn't smile. I just looked at him, calm, seated behind my desk like a queen in her palace. About what? I asked. About the land. The hotel. Everything, he said slowly. You're making moves without family. We deserve family. I interrupted softly. Family shows up. Family communicates. Family celebrates milestones. You skipped my graduation. Do you remember? He swallowed. I thought you'd understand. I shook my head gently. I understood. That's why I moved first. Quietly. Strategically. Without making a scene. The tension was thick, almost suffocating. Every word, every pause, was a reminder. I controlled the room. The business. The narrative. Dad tried one last approach. We can still work together. Negotiate. I leaned back in my chair. Calm. Controlled. Negotiate what? You missed your chance to lead. You missed your chance to show support. Timing matters. Precision matters. You had neither. He looked down, jaw tight. Silence filled the room. The chairman, standing quietly beside me, didn't need to say a word. The message was clear. Authority rested in the hands of the person who showed up prepared, composed, and unshakable. Dad finally left without another word. And as the door clicked shut, I realized something. Sometimes, the quietest meetings deliver the loudest consequences. And tonight, I wasn't just in control of my empire. I was in control of my story. By the following week, the effects of my moves were impossible to ignore. News outlets picked up the story. Headlines splashed across the financial sections. 22-year-old developer outmaneuvers legacy firms. Harper Group secures prime downtown block, moves ahead of competitors. Dad's company struggled to respond. His proposals, once eagerly anticipated, were now outdated and overlooked. Investors began questioning his leadership decisions, some even pulling out entirely. Mom called me quietly one evening. "Evelyn, maybe we should talk about a compromise." I smiled softly, calm and quiet, the kind of smile that carried no anger but absolute control. "Mom," I said, "this isn't personal. It's business. And business doesn't wait for apologies." Across the city, my father's frustration grew. Calls went unanswered, doors closed. Every step he took now had to contend with the reality that his daughter, once overlooked, underestimated, had surpassed him completely. I watched all this unfold from my office window, the skyline reflecting the early sunset across the glass. My hotel, my deals, my strategic acquisitions, all proof of the power of preparation, patience, and precision. No shouting. No dramatic confrontations. Just quiet, calculated moves that toppled his influence without a single reckless step. By Friday, the public had recognized the shift. Articles praised my vision, investors reached out, and my reputation solidified. Dad and Mom? They finally realized what they had ignored for years. That power, respect, and recognition aren't given. They are earned. And tonight, the dominoes had all fallen. By the weekend, the city had fully acknowledged the new order. My name was everywhere. Headlines, interviews, podcasts. Evelyn Harper, the youngest developer redefining luxury real estate. Dad's office? Empty desks. His investors? Cautious, hesitant, questioning every decision. The man who once controlled the narrative in our family was now sidelined, irrelevant in the very industry he thought he dominated. I walked through my hotel lobby, polished marble underfoot, sunlight reflecting off the glass facade. Guests smiled, staff moved with precision, the building humming with life. My creation, my rules. Mom sent a message that night. "We're proud." I read it and smiled faintly. Not because I needed their approval, but because I had made them realize the truth without raising my voice. Dad never called. Never admitted mistakes. But the board chairman whispered something to me that made me chuckle softly. "Control quietly, and the world will notice." Exactly. I poured a glass of champagne, letting the bubbles rise slowly. 5 years of being overlooked, ignored, and underestimated had culminated in this moment. Calm. Elegant. Irreversible. No yelling. No chaos. No childish revenge. Just precision, patience, and quiet strategy. For 22 years, I had been underestimated. Tonight, that ended. The lesson? Appearances deceive. Timing decides. And the girl they ignored? She wrote her own headlines. She owned her empire. She showed up. And they watched from the sidelines.